This is the longest coastal defense system ever built in answer to a single disaster, what the media have dubbed the Great Wall of Japan, a chain of concrete walls running close to 400 kilometers along the northeast coast of Japan. It isn't one continuous structure. It's a linked barrier, curling around bays, sealing off river mouths, cutting through fishing villages that have faced the Pacific for 1,000 years. In its tallest sections, it climbs to 14.7 meters, higher than a 5-story building. From the water, it looks like the rampart of a nation braced for war, and the enemy is the ocean itself. It cost 1.3 trillion yen, around $12 billion, of poured concrete, steel, and grief. Because the wall exists for one reason. On the 11th of March, 2011, a wave came ashore here and killed nearly 20,000 people. The same disaster triggered a meltdown at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant, sent shockwaves through cities from Sendai in the north all the way down the Tohoku coast, and left a nation asking what it owed the sea that had just taken everything from it. This is the answer a mourning country gave back. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The engineers who built it already know it will not stop the next great wave. They'll tell you so themselves. Its real job was never to hold the ocean back. It was to buy a few minutes for people to run. The Great Wall of Japan. And yet for a structure this vast, one that reshaped hundreds of kilometers of coastline and swallowed whole harbors behind gray slabs, it has never entered the global imagination the way other megaprojects have. No viral drone films, no tourist viewpoints, no name that travels. It's a wall you could see from a passing ship, and still, somehow, the world looks straight past it. To understand why a nation would spend $12 billion to wall off its own coastline, to turn its back on its own horizon, and still admit the sea could win, you have to go back to the morning everything the old walls promised was proven a lie. Back to a single day in March, and a wave that rewrote the rules. At 2:46 in the afternoon on the 11th of March, 2011, the seabed off the coast of Tohoku tore open. Two tectonic plates that had been locked together for centuries slipped in an instant, and the ground shook for as long as 6 minutes. It was a magnitude 9 earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan. A reminder of where this country sits, straddling the Pacific Ring of Fire, where the planet's most volatile tectonic boundaries collide. But the earthquake wasn't what killed nearly 20,000 people. What killed them came from the horizon, and in some places it arrived within half an hour. The Japan Meteorological Agency issued its first tsunami warning within 3 minutes of the quake. It wasn't enough. The wave that reached Tohoku wasn't the curling blue wall of a surfer's imagination. It was worse. A black, rising flood of water and mud and debris, gaining mass and pressure as it came, until in places it stood higher than a 10-story building. In one district of Miyako, the water is estimated to have climbed 40 meters up the land. 40 meters. A 13-story tower of ocean moving inland. And Japan wasn't unprepared. This is the part outsiders miss. Japan had spent the better part of a century becoming the best defended coastline on the planet. The town of Taro had built what locals proudly called their own Great Wall, an X-shaped seawall, 10 meter tall, running more than 2 kilometers, raised after tsunamis had erased the town twice, in 1896 and again in 1933. It was a marvel. It came with dozens of marked evacuation routes. It was supposed to make Taro unsinkable. The wave went over it like it wasn't there. The water overtopped the 10-meter wall, poured into the streets behind it, and then, this is the cruelty of it, the wall that was meant to protect the town helped hold the water inside it. In Taro alone, 140 people were killed, and 41 were never found. Up and down the coast, from Rikuzen-Takata to Keisenuma, the story repeated. Seawalls that had stood for generations were overtopped, undermined, and torn from their foundations. Japan's finest defenses had been built against the tsunamis of living memory, and the sea had just sent something older and larger than living memory could hold. Out of that failure came a single, defiant decision. Build higher, build longer, build heavier than any nation had ever dared against the ocean. And what that actually took, the concrete, the scale, the sheer engineering nerve of it, is almost hard to believe. So how do you wall off 400 kilometers of ocean? The first thing to understand is that you can't build one wall. The Tohoku coast is a jagged maze of bays and inlets and river mouths, and a tsunami behaves differently in each one, funneling and amplifying depending on the shape of the seabed below. So this isn't a single structure, it's hundreds of them, each one tuned to the wave data and the geography of the exact patch of coast it defends. Some sections rise to 15 meters. Others are far lower. Every one is a custom answer to a local question, and most of the wall you'll never see. Beneath the visible concrete lies a second, hidden structure, foundations driven deep into the ground, 20 meters and more in places, because the coast throws up three completely different problems to solve. Soft clay in some places, dense sand in others, solid rock in the rest. Each one demands its own engineering. In the soft ground, crews drove piles and layered in membranes and compacted clay cores to keep the sea from undermining the wall from below. Because the part that fails a seawall is rarely the wall. It's the ground it stands on. But the real genius isn't the wall at all. It's the idea that no single barrier should ever have to face a tsunami alone. The best defended stretches use a system in depth, an offshore breakwater to break the wave's first punch, a field of tetrapods, those four-legged concrete jacks, to scatter its energy, a rubble mound, and only then the wall itself. By the time the sea reaches the concrete, it's already been bled of much of its power. Which brings us to the most staggering piece of the entire network, and it sits at the bottom of Kamaishi Bay. There, Japan built the deepest breakwater on Earth, a barrier reaching 63 meters down to the seabed, nearly 2 kilometers long, that took 31 years and around $1.5 billion to complete. When the 2011 tsunami struck, it cut the wave's force by around 40%, according to Japan's Port and Airport Research Institute, and bought the city about 6 extra minutes. And then it broke. The deepest breakwater ever built, 3 decades of work, was torn apart and scattered across the seabed by the very wave it had just slowed. Now hold on to that, because 6 minutes, not zero damage, not a stopped wave, just 6 minutes, bought by a structure that destroyed itself in the buying, is the quiet admission hiding inside this entire $12 billion project. And it's where the story turns. The decision came fast. Within a month of the disaster, the central government had convened a reconstruction council. Before the year was out, Japan's parliament had passed new laws for building tsunami-resilient cities, and the country had committed to a reconstruction effort whose budget would eventually run past 25 trillion yen. This was a nation on emergency footing, and the plans were drawn largely from the top by government councils and engineering panels working against the clock, often faster than the towns below them could be consulted. And buried inside those plans was a single decision that changes everything you think you're looking at when you see that wall. Because after 2011, Japan's disaster planners did something genuinely radical. They stopped designing for one kind of tsunami and started designing for two. Level 1, the prevention tsunami, is the kind that arrives once every few decades, up to roughly a once-in-a-150-year event. Against that wave, the walls are built to win outright, to stop the water at the concrete and keep it out. But Level 2 is the rare monster, the once-in-several-centuries or once-in-a-millennium event. The 2011 tsunami was a Level 2. And against a Level 2, the walls aren't designed to win. They're designed to lose slowly. That is the secret at the heart of this whole project. In the guidelines that followed, from Japan's Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, and the Central Disaster Management Council, the language is blunt. Against the largest possible tsunami, the seawalls will be overtopped, and they must be designed on the assumption that they will be. The doctrine is explicit. Coastal walls cannot always protect life and property, and communities must never rely on the concrete alone. The wall's real job, against the wave that actually matters, was never to stop it. It's to slow it, shave its height, and buy those few minutes to reach high ground. Which lands us on the most uncomfortable question in the entire story. A 15-meter wall doesn't just hold back water. It holds back the horizon, the warning signs, the instinct that says, run. And remember Taro, where the wall meant to save the town helped seal the water inside it. So you build the new walls higher, and you may buy minutes, or you may simply teach a coastline to stop running. That tension isn't an engineering problem. It's a human one. And it's being lived right now by the people on the other side of the concrete. A wall like this is paid for twice, once in yen and once every single day, by the people who have to live behind it. Walk the rebuilt streets of Taro today, and you'll find its new wall rising as high as 14.7 meters, taller than the one the wave tore apart. To catch even a glimpse of the ocean their families have fished for generations, residents climb more than 30 steps up a staircase that seems to lead straight into the sky. They live beside the sea now without being able to see it. For a fishing town, that's a strange kind of exile. For some, that trade was worth making. To a survivor who'd watched the water take everything, the wall meant safety and jobs, and proof the government hadn't forgotten them. And some, still carrying the trauma of that day, argued the walls should be built even higher. In many towns, there was no real choice at all. The seawall had to rise before anyone was permitted to rebuild the homes and shops behind it. For those families, the wall wasn't a philosophy to debate. It was simply the price of going home. But others looked at the same concrete and saw a mistake being poured in real time. In the tiny village of Moon, in Kesanuma, the tsunami killed 4 people and broke the community, and its residents refused to hide behind a barrier. They moved the whole village uphill instead, to 40 meters above sea level, keeping the ocean in full view. Makoto Hatakeyama, an oyster farmer there, put the case against the wall as plainly as anyone. The only thing that saves you from a tsunami is climbing to high ground. Whether or not there's a wall, he argued, changes nothing, except that a wall can fool you into thinking you're safe. To him, the sea was never an enemy to be sealed away. It was his living and his identity. And then there's Onagawa, the town that said no. Onagawa lost more than 800 people in 2011, roughly 1 in 12 of everyone who lived there. When officials came with a plan for a towering seawall, the town turned the plan down, and their reasoning cuts to the very heart of this story. A wall, they argued, might not stop the next tsunami anyway. And worse, it would rob them of the sea's own warning. Because one of the oldest signs a tsunami is coming is the tide pulling suddenly, violently, back from the shore, wall off the water, and you blind the town to the very thing that could save it. So Onagawa rebuilt on raised earth and artificial plateaus, with the ocean still in plain sight. Two philosophies on one broken coastline: wall the ocean out, or stay in its presence and stay ready to run. So what did Japan actually build? Not a wall exactly. A wager. Nearly 400 kilometers of concrete, $12 billion, a decade of relentless construction drawing on a century of hard-won engineering, all of it resting on a single, unprovable bet: that when the next great wave comes, the walls will buy enough time. Not stop it. Buy time. The whole colossal structure is designed around the assumption of its own overtopping, a fortress that concedes in its very blueprints that the enemy will one day come over the top. There's something almost humble in that, and something deeply unsettling, because a bet has two sides. On the winning side, minutes bought, waves blunted, lives that will be saved on some future afternoon we cannot yet date. On the losing side, a coastline that can no longer see the water it lives beside, fishing towns sealed into a strange twilight, and the unspoken risk that a wall tall enough to feel safe is a wall tall enough to keep you from running. Japan has spent $12 billion and turned its back on its own horizon, and it still doesn't know if it made the right choice. Neither do the engineers. That's the honest, uncomfortable truth beneath all the concrete. And here's the part that stays with you. The bet hasn't been settled. A level 2 tsunami, the kind that justified all of this, comes perhaps once in several centuries. The walls now lining the Tohoku coast may stand for 200 years without ever meeting the wave they were built for. The people who poured them, the fishermen living behind them, all of us watching now, none of us will be here to learn whether they worked. This is engineering as an act of faith, handed forward to a generation not yet born. And that inheritance comes with a catch. Concrete doesn't last forever, and the sea isn't standing still. These walls are built to last decades, not the centuries the threat is measured in, and the oceans they hold back are slowly, steadily rising, which means the bet will have to be placed again. Someday, a future generation will stand at the foot of an aging, weathering wall and decide all over again whether to raise it higher or finally let the coast breathe. And that may be the most remarkable thing about the Great Wall of Japan. It was built by a nation that had just been broken by the sea, in full knowledge that the sea could break it again, and built anyway. Concrete, steel, and grief, stacked 15 meters high against the horizon, holding the line for a wave that hasn't come, in a fight that may never truly be won. The ocean is patient, and now, so is the wall.